Hey everyone, welcome back to 996 The Howl. This video, the next two videos, we're going to talk about free agents. Free agency day is July 1st after the draft day. I'll have draft videos as well, but today we're going to be talking about restricted free agents and then current roster players that are entering into unrestricted free agency. What is a restricted free agent? A restricted free agent player is a player that needs a new contract, but the team still owns their rights, and this player can't just go willy-nilly sign with another NHL team. Players with the red star next to their name means they're arbitration eligible. What is arbitration? This gives players rights to go to a third-party mediator. Let's say the Utah team has a number and a contract. The player disagrees and has their own contract in mind. They go to a mediator. Usually they just cut it in half or reach the middle point between the two, and they're given a new contract decided by the mediator. Usually that's a one-year contract. This team, since Bill Armstrong has taken over, has never reached arbitration with a player, but two times they've gotten really close. I think the Lawson Krause arbitration meeting was literally in the afternoon, and then Bill Armstrong and Krause came to agreement the morning of that day. And then last summer, McBain and the team reached an agreement a day or two, maybe the same day as well, before the arbitration case. So it seems like Bill Armstrong doesn't like to go to arbitration. It could get messy when you go to a third party and the team is like, listen, you're worth this. And then the player says, no, I'm worth more than that. And then it kind of gets messy, ruins the relationship a bit. The green is my thoughts, my own opinions of what Utah should give the player, their new contract, and the blue is their current contract at the 2023-2024 season. So we start with Barrett Hayton, who only had 10 points in 33 games last season, but he was injured. He got injured celebrating a goal. Just a rough season for Barrett Hayton. The season before last season, Hayton had 43 points in 82 games. He's a former 5th overall draft pick for the before Arizona Coyotes, 5th overall. Now Utah's picking 6th overall. So it's not always such a, sexy draft pick at that high of a number. When the former GM John Chaika made the Barrett Hayton pick at number 5, a lot of head scratching, but he said, you know what, he's going to take some time. He's going to become a Patrice Bergeron type player. I'm not ready to give up on Hayton. I like Hayton. Obviously, he doesn't carry a first-round pedigree. Obviously, the Coyotes at the time should have picked someone else other than Hayton, but he's cheap. He plays well with Clayton Keller and Nick Schmaltz on that line. So he's not going to cost a lot. So for me, I would give him another bridge deal of 2 years at $2.5 million, a $500,000 raise for Barrett Hayton. Wouldn't go long-term with Hayton. People say, hey, why don't they trade Barrett Hayton? He's got no trade value. There's no reason why a team would give the Utah team anything other than, more than a third-round pick. Now, you might say $2.5 million, that's so much money. Well, the salary cap floor for the NHL is estimated to be around $65 million. The Utah team right now has a $44.4 million cap hit. So they have to spend $20 million just to be eligible to play in the NHL. The ceiling is at $87.5 million. So, the Utah could theoretically spend $40 million in the offseason or reach the ceiling, which I don't think that's a great idea. So a lot of interesting things this Utah team could do in free agencies. Then we go to Sean Durzi. Want to mention Hayton does have arbitration rights, along with Durzi, Moser, Valimaki, and Kesselring. Durzi, he was traded for a second-round pick last summer. He was supposed to be brought in to be that Chychrun replacement, Gostisbehere replacement, be that offensive power play number 1 puck-moving defenseman. Sort of really took a nosedive at the halfway point of the season. Not sure what happened. He had 1 goal from game 41 to 82, and I'm pretty sure that 1 goal was in the last game of the season. but he has 9 goals, 32 assists, 41 points. He's 26 years old. Currently made $1.7 million. I'm willing to there's something there with Dursey. I don't see him as our number one defenseman. I think he'd be a great second pairing defenseman. So you could get him for $3 million for 3 years. It's not a lot. You won't be, handcuffed with this contract. I think there's upside to Dursey. It's just going to take a little bit of a while. It's not going to be as immediate as we all thought when the trade happened. But I see some good offensive instincts from Dursey. He's great at facilitating the puck on the power play. Just doesn't really have that offensive threatening shot from the back end that you want a power play number one. But he could be a great power play number two defenseman. And again, we have money to spend. So he's a young player, seemed to like playing with the team in Arizona. And good. He liked the locker room, with Keller, Schmaltz. So just give him a 3x3. Just make it easy for them. For him. I mean, 41 points in about 82 games. Not bad. Like a half point per game percentage. But again, I see him more as a number 3 defenseman, not a number 1 defenseman. Then we go to Moser, sort of like Dursey, where I see him as a second pairing defenseman, not a top pairing defenseman. If Moser and Dursey could be your 3 and 4 defensemen, and then whether in free agency you grab a number 1 and a number 2, or someone like Maverick Lamoureux, one of our defensive prospects, makes the jump, or Duda or Simishev in a year or two, they could be your top pairing. But for Moser, I like what I see in terms of a defensive defenseman. I think we've seen enough of him now where he's not going to be that offensive threatening defenseman, but it's great to have that stability, consistency, and hardworking defenseman that keeps your puck out of the net. He had 26 points last season. The year before that, he had 31 points. All defensemen for the Coyotes last year. They really took a step back. They weren't getting barely any offense from their back end. It was all the forwards carrying the weight of offense. So this season for Utah, they better, fix that. I'm sure they know they're at the bottom of the league in terms of offense from their back end. Get some more scoring defensemen and bring Moser and Dursey down in the defensive depth chart. But it's always great to have stability. Those stay-at-home defensemen, which I think Moser's going to grow into. He's making a league minimum right now, under $1 million. I give him 5 years at 2.5. I like what I see in terms of defending. And he, 3 or 4 years from now, he could be on your bottom pairing and all your defensive prospects jump ahead of Moser. Wouldn't Moser as a 5th and 6th defenseman be amazing? And you get him for pretty cheap as well at $2.5 million. Then we go to Valimaki, 17 points last season, only 2 goals. The year before that, he had 34 points in 82 games. He was a waiver pickup from the Calgary Flames about 2 years ago, 26 years old. He's making $1 million. I just give him a $500,000 raise, sign him for 2 more years just to be that depth defenseman. I would love Valimaki to be a bottom pairing defenseman or even sit in the press box. If there's an injury, then you literally have Valimaki in your back pocket. You need depth. We've seen that across these playoffs, especially with the Dallas Stars. There's so much depth, and you can't just have all these players play high up in your lineup when they really shouldn't. Bias, Coyotes fans from last season, Utah fans now, they love Valimaki. They want him to be a top 4 defenseman, but you look around the NHL, it's like, all right, this guy's more of a bottom pairing defenseman, maybe an extra defenseman you want. So give him 2 years, $1.5 million. There's always injuries, and to have Valimaki fill in that spot, that would be a great position to be in. Same thing with Kesselring. Kesselring's a bit younger at 24 years old, 21 points in 66 games played. He's currently lighting it up in the World Cup Championships over in Europe, playing for Team USA. He's got 2 goals in 5 games as I'm recording this video. 3 points in 5 games. Both of his goals were just snipe shows. He's a big body. Bill Armstrong wants him to play more physical, be a bit more mean, play with that. Well, I guess, is there cacti in Utah? I don't think so. But Bill Armstrong with the Coyotes, wanted to be a prickly cactus-like team. And that's why he went out to get Kesselring in that Bukestad trade to Edmonton a couple years ago. He's big, clears the front of the net, could be a bit better in that physical department. But again, I would love him. He's still young. There's some offensive upside there. He hits a lot of posts. I would hang on to him. Again, just like Valimaki, would be a great depth defenseman, but I would not rely on Kesselring and Valimaki as top 4 defensemen moving forward. Then we start to go to like Tucson Roadrunner, American Hockey League type players in Soderstrom, Kolyachonok, Yannick, Kellerman, and Ben McCartney. We'll start with Soderstrom. Again, another first-round pick from the former general manager, John Shaika. I think they got him 15th, 16th, or 17th overall, somewhere around the mid-teens there. 23 years old, does not carry that pedigree as a first-round pick defenseman. 41 points in the American Hockey League. He's a great defenseman for the Tucson Roadrunners, a top-pairing defenseman, but just doesn't really have it in the NHL. I have no idea what his identity is in the NHL. He's not great at defending. He sort of has some offensive upside, but you never really see it consistently in the NHL. For me, he currently makes league minimum. Just give him league minimum, again, about $1 million or slightly below that. Hang on to him for 2 more years. Because he has that first-round pick pedigree, he might be a late bloomer, so you don't want to sell off too early, and then when he's 25, 26 years old, he's like a top-pairing defenseman. So you could hold on to him, give him a little bit of a raise so he's happy, and see what happens, and then in 2 years, you move on from him, or you trade him. You know, he won't get you a lot, even though he's a former first-round pick. But you never know with general managers across the league. They can see first-round pick and be like, yes, I want him. But they probably look at Utah's defense and is like, if he can't crack that defensive lineup, I doubt he's cracking our defensive lineup. Then we go to Kolyachonok. Again, a young defensive player, not drafted in the first round. He had 11 points in 36 games played for the Roadrunners last season. He had 4 points in 5 games played for the Coyotes last season. Bit under the radar. I had to do a double take when I saw that. I really don't remember him being a 4 points in 5 game player, but he's all right. Again, like Soderstrom. Maybe he's even better than Soderstrom, to be honest. But again, he's a young player with some upside. Hang on to him. He's really cheap. And 2 years at $1 million, then you can move on. When you're, some defensive prospects Utah has, like I mentioned, Simishev, maybe Kipke, they're not coming to the Roadrunners next season. So you got to fill up the Roadrunners defense, and it's great to have young, high-end defensemen like Kolyachonok and Soderstrom there to fill in that gap until those types of defensive prospects are ready to make the jump. And then we go to Yannick, who had a bit of a weird offseason last year where his agent, Alan Wash, is very loud on Twitter and was making some comments to the Coyotes like something about these teams not giving the money to the players that they deserve. Yannick at the NHL level, he's pretty below average, but in the American Hockey League, he's pretty good. 36 points, 55 games played, 24 years old. I would give him $1 million for 1 year, but I'm pretty sure that relationship with Yannick and Bill Armstrong was totally ripped apart last offseason with those tweets from his agent. Again, these players don't have arbitration rights, so Bill Armstrong could give them like the bottom of the barrel contract, and these players have to accept it, or they have to go play in Europe and they can't play in the NHL because they're restricted free agents. We go to Kellerman, who's having a great World Cup championship as well. That's currently going on. 32 points, 54 games played for the Roadrunners last year. Just hang on to him, $1 million 1 year. Again, a stopgap for the forward group as you wait for the forward prospects to have another year in junior before making the jump to the American Hockey League. And Ben McCartney, I'm pretty sure he's like a 7th round pick by Bill Armstrong. Well, Bill Armstrong wasn't even allowed at the draft in 2020, I believe. So it was from Bill Armstrong's staff. He's a young guy, 23 years old, big body, power forward type player. I believe he wears the alternate captain patch, the A, for the Roadrunners. I'd hang on to him again. I used to like him. He was always a point per game player in every league he played in. Then on the Roadrunners, he's been riddled with injuries the past 2 seasons. He's never played a full season for the Roadrunners, so I'm not ready to give up on him either. Then we go to Curtis Douglas, 6'9", 6'9", 243 pounds. Just because of that, give him a $1 million 1-year contract. Then we go to current Utah NHL players that are unrestricted free agents. These players could willy-nilly sign with any NHL team they want. It's not a good crop of players. No one's going to be sad well, maybe Vialta is the only one I'd be upset about if he leaves. But O'Brien, as Utah fans know him as Spicy Tuna, I think that press conference the day after the season ended in mid-April where did he take off his shirt or he just had a WWE type appearance and just went off, got the crowd hype as hell. Just for that, he could probably earn a contract. For me, you always need that sort of fighter, intimidator on your team who's always willing to fight. You got to give credit to O'Brien. He will fight anybody. Most of the time, he'll lose the fight. But hey, at least he's willing to step up and never backs down from a challenge. I just don't want him to play 82 games a year. I want him on the team. He's a great locker room guy. I just want him to play 40 games a season. You can sign him for league minimum. But I don't want him consistently playing hockey on the fourth line. I feel like we could have someone else in that spot and have a threatening fourth line, like Dallas. Dallas doesn't really have an intimidating fighter on the fourth line. They have a fourth line that can score, and the other team has to defend. If the other team sees O'Brien on the ice for 82 games a season, it's like they can take a shift off. But great stuff by him at the Utah unveiling of the hockey team. That probably earns him a contract. Travis Boyd was injured for pretty much the whole season last season. It's tough to see, but again, we're ready to move on from guys like Travis Boyd, Travis Dermott, Josh Brown. These are really, really depth NHL players that could barely crack any other NHL lineup. It's just time for this team to evolve and not have these type of players. They were great when they were with the Coyotes because they were so cheap. They all made league minimum and they didn't complain and they ate up a lot of ice time. But and they were great for a rebuild. But now it's time to move on from that rebuild. Matt Vialta, the starting goaltender for the Roadrunners, this is probably the most important unrestricted free agent. They need to sign him. He was unbelievable for the Roadrunners last season. I believe he led the whole league in wins in the American Hockey League. Give him some support, maybe a veteran type presence goaltender like Malcolm Subban to keep the load off of Vialta, but you shouldn't move on from him. He has great American Hockey League numbers. I didn't like that one game he played for the Coyotes last season, but again, he's a very young American Hockey League goaltender who has to still learn and develop his goaltending skills. Nathan Smith, it's been too long. We acquired him about 3 seasons ago from Winnipeg. We acquired him and McBain at the same time, and McBain is a consistent NHL player. Nathan Smith has been with the Roadrunners for 2 straight seasons now. I'm ready to move on, but again, you want some depth for the Roadrunners if your prospects aren't ready to make the jump, and he'd be a great first-line, second-line centerman for the Roadrunners. Justin Kirkland, Leonard, they're American Hockey League veterans. You always need some veterans for the Roadrunners, but again, I'd be okay if you move on from them. You're not going to... It's not a terrible decision if you move on from 75% of these type of players. But Ryan McGregor, again, another veteran American Hockey League player. Same with Barron, Crotty, Kampfer, all veteran American Hockey League players. If you want some veterans for the Roadrunners to supplement that young core that they're building, those would be great guys to have. And Koch, He's, again, playing in the World Championship right now as well. Big body defenseman, stay-at-home defenseman. You know, you could keep him, move on from him. It's not really going to move the needle one way or the other. So that's it. You should probably just focus on these players because they're going to be playing for Utah. These players will probably be playing for the Tucson Roadrunners. Any injuries, these players will be called up. But again, if you just take all my contracts in green, it's about $18 million. And that would be still below the cap floor. And they have so much money and flexibility in free agency to get big names. Not so big. I don't want them to get Stamkos, not even Reinhardt, to be honest. We'll talk about in the next videos when I talk about free agents. But they got to spend money. And I think like these Hayton, Durzi, Moser, they deserve some raises. They stuck with the team through some dark times in Arizona. Just give them a little bit of a raise. And nothing too long in these contracts for Hayton and Durzi. You know, if something unfortunate happens, injuries, or they don't project to be that great NHL player. But for Moser, we know what we're getting. I'm willing and I'm confident to give him a 5-year deal. But yeah, nothing above $4 million for sure. So that's it for me. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to see, spread the word. And as always, thank you for your support.